The calendar reads May 16th, year 2167, but dates mean nothing anymore. The demon race has conquered the very last inch of human territory. The human world is gone, replaced by a charnel house of fire and bone. In the ruins of a once great city, beasts feast on the fallen as society burns to ash. The world hasn't just suffered, it has completely fallen. Among the jagged remains of a skyscraper, a lone figure is pinned against a broken pillar, a bloody monument to a lost cause. The fires of the apocalypse dance in the background, illuminating the total annihilation of civilization. Breath comes in ragged wet gasps. Sichen, the SSS lightning assassin, a man with spiky yellow hair and eyes that burn like dying stars, is humanity's last hope. But even a legend can bleed. He hangs there, gasping, huff, huff, blood pouring down his face and chest, his golden gaze fixed on the horror before him. An infinity symbol hangs from his neck, a cruel irony for a man at his end. 7 years ago, the nightmare began. Several demon kings suddenly descended upon this world without warning. Leading the charge was the monstrous demon kings Lanyu. With overwhelming power, they swiftly trampled the realm of man, turning cities into graveyards in a matter of months. Sichen remembers the silhouettes of the kings standing over the burning horizon, the beginning of the end. Demon King's Lanyu, a massive demon king with twisted horns and glowing red eyes, towers over the wreckage. He stares down at the broken assassin and sneers with a voice that drips with malice. To think you were called humanity's last hope. Your entire race is nothing but pathetic, fragile trash. To him, the struggle of millions was nothing more than a minor nuisance. The Demon King raises a massive clawed hand, red energy crackling around his fingertips like trapped lightning. He looks at the dying warrior and declares, "Now it's time to fulfill your only remaining purpose." The air grows heavy with the scent of ozone and death as he prepares the final blow. Behind him, the pillar where Sichen is pinned glows with reflected fire. A surge of crimson power erupts, a jagged terrifying manifestation of demonic energy. The force of it threatens to tear the very atmosphere apart. This isn't just an execution, it is a ritual of consumption. The red claws of energy flex, ready to strike and end the era of humanity forever. Demon King's Lanyu looms closer, his face twisted into a mask of hunger and greed. He hisses the command that seals Sichen's fate. Become him Y food, become him Y power. He intends to absorb the last SSS rank soul, feasting on the very essence of humanity's greatest warrior to fuel his own dark ascension. A blinding shockwave of white and red light tears through the battlefield. The sound is deafening, a roar of pure energy that shatters what little remains of the city. The collision of demonic power and a desperate rising counterforce creates a vortex of destruction that swallows everything in sight. This is the moment where the hunter becomes the hunted. But Sichen's soul is screaming louder than the explosion. No, my sister, my so emeredus. He sees their faces in the white light, the people he failed to protect. The red energy isn't just external anymore, it's the manifestation of his own agonizing grief and the blood he spilled for a losing war. The memory of them is the only thing keeping him from fatting. Images of the fallen flash before his eyes like shattered glass. My master, every single person closest to me. He sees the silhouettes of those he loves standing in a sea of blood. The realization hits him with a visceral force. All of them had their lives snatched away by you beasts. The grief transforms into a white-hot electric rage that surges through his broken veins. Lightning crackles across Sichen's teeth as he grits them in a terrifying snarl. He looks directly into the eyes of death and makes a final desperate vow. For their sake, even if it's the last thing I do, I will take you down to hell with me. He isn't fighting for survival anymore, he's fighting for a mutual grave. The infinity necklace glows with a blinding prismatic light. He pushes past the limits of human endurance, reaching for a power that demands his very life as fuel. The holographic message flares in the void of his mind. SSS Ultimate Skill Terminus Arc. A pillar of rainbow-colored lightning erupts from his body, soaring into the heavens and turning the night sky into a day of judgment. Sichen stands at the center, a silhouette of pure destructive light. The world turns a blinding yellow as the Terminus Arc expands. Demon King's Lanyu, once the arrogant predator, is now just a shadow caught in the blast. The sheer magnitude of the skill dwarfs the Demon King, his soldiers disintegrating instantly in the peripheral lightning strikes. The shock on the demon's face is the last thing Sichen sees through the glare. The Demon King's eyes widen in genuine terror as the light binds him. What is this? I can't move, he screams, his voice cracking with panic. The SSS skill isn't just damaging him, it's locking his very existence in place, pinning the master of demons to the same fate he tried to inflict. The arrogance is gone, replaced by the realization that even trash can burn with the heat of a star. Si Chen's body begins to fragment, his skin cracking like porcelain as the lightning consumes him from the inside out. He looks strangely at peace, his golden eyes wide and glassy reflecting the end he chose. He isn't screaming, he's simply fading into the light, his sacrifice nearly complete. The infinity symbol on his chest is the last part of him to glow. In his final moments, the shards of his memory surround him. He sees a vision of his sister, her face streaked with blood and tears as he held her in the rain. "Sister," he whispers in the silence of his mind. The memory is painful, a sharp fragment of the life he couldn't save, now shattering along with his physical form. Another shard drifts by, showing the back of the man who taught him everything. Master, the figure is distant, a silhouette of strength that Si Chen strove to emulate. The loss of his mentor was a wound that never healed, a debt he is finally paying back with his own soul. The darkness of the void begins to swallow the edges of the memory. The most painful shard appears, a family photo from a time of peace, showing his parents and a younger, happier sister. "Mom, Dad," he reaches out for them, but they are just echoes of a world that no longer exists. They are the faces of the humanity he failed, the ghosts that have haunted his every step since the invasion began. The fragments continue to fall away into the blackness. He thinks to them, "We'll see each other soon." But the thought is poisoned by a bitter regret that tastes like ash in his mouth. "It's a pity I wasn't strong enough." Even at the very end, the guilt of his perceived weakness is the heaviest burden he carries. As his consciousness dissolves into white light, one final agonizing thought echoes through his mind. If only I had been a little bit stronger. If he had just had a bit more power, perhaps the cities wouldn't have burned. Perhaps his sister would still be laughing, and perhaps the world wouldn't be ending in this blinding flash of desperate magic. Demon King's Lanyu is disintegrating, his dark armor peeling away like burnt paper. Even in his death throes, his hatred burns. "You lowly, inferior race, to think you could AC?" He can't even finish the sentence before the terminus arc obliterates his physical form. The conqueror of worlds is reduced to sparks in the wind by a man he called trash. The shards of reality shatter completely, leaving only white space and a lingering regret. If only I could go back to that time and discover that demon lair sooner. Si Chen's mind clings to the turning points, the moments where the tide could have been turned if he had known then what he knows now. The missed opportunities haunt his final descent into the abyss. The final vision is a city drowning in prismatic light, a beautiful and terrible end to a decade of war. If only I could have stopped the very first Demon King, the realization strikes with visceral force. His entire struggle was merely a reaction, not a prevention. If he had only changed the beginning, this hell would never have existed. With that final impossible wish, the SSS Lightning Assassin begins to vanish from the dying world of 2167. But even as the light swallows him, a lingering echo of regret refuses to be silenced. The blinding radiance of the terminus arc fades into a dull, haunting void. As consciousness slips away, a final agonizing regret echoes through the silence. Inside his mind, Si Chen thought, "Then I wouldn't have." The fragments of his memory shatter like glass, drifting into the darkness. He felt the weight of his failures pressing down one last time. He continued the thought, lost everything so early, and prepared for the end. But death did not take him. Instead, a blurry shape slowly drifted into focus, a simple ceiling light glowing with a soft, warm hue that felt foreign after years of living in a world of blood and fire. The darkness was gone, replaced by the mundane reality of an indoor room. Si Chen's eyes snapped open, his vision clear and sharp. The red glow of the battlefield was gone, replaced by the clean, quiet atmosphere of a room bathed in sunlight. There was no scent of ozone or rotting flesh, only the faint, sterile smell of a hospital. He was lying flat on a thin mattress, his body feeling oddly light and whole. There were no jagged wounds, no broken bones, and no Demon King looming over him. He stared at the ceiling in disbelief, his mind struggling to bridge the gap between the apocalypse and this sudden peace. He sat up abruptly, his hands trembling as he checked his own body. The bandage on his nose felt real, but the absence of his massive scars was impossible. Gasping for air, he whispered, I'm not dead," and gripped the sheets, his heart racing with a mix of terror and hope. Si Chen scanned the room, his eyes darting from the medical curtains to the simple office desk and chair nearby. It was an infirmary, clean, quiet, and completely untouched by war. In his confusion, he asked the empty room, "Where is this?" As if the walls might provide an answer. He stood up and walked toward the window, his movements fluid and painless. The sunlight felt warm against his skin, a sensation he hadn't truly felt in years. He peered out, his eyes widening as he prepared to see the ruins of the world once more. But outside, there were no monsters. He looked down from the school infirmary hospital wing and saw a campus teeming with life. Students walked in groups, laughing and carrying books, completely oblivious to the doom that had once claimed them all. The world was green, vibrant, and alive. Sichin stared in total shock, gasping at the impossibility of the scene. His breath hitched as he leaned against the window frame, his eyes scanning the faces of the living. Inside his mind, he questioned everything he knew. Wasn't the world already destroyed? All these people, where did they all come from? It was a miracle that felt like a hallucination. He stepped away from the window and found a mirror on the wall, splashing cold water on his face to ground himself. After a long while, I finally accepted the reality. The face staring back at him was younger, softer, and devoid of the 1,000-yard stare of a dying soldier. It was the face of a student, not a martyr. The truth settled into his mind with the weight of a mountain. He realized, I have returned 10 years into the past to my university days. The year was no longer 2167. He had regressed to a time when the word demon was still just a myth. He stared at his youthful reflection, his mind already beginning to calculate the possibilities. Suddenly, a sharp digital ringing sound filled his ears. A holographic waveform shimmered in the air before him, pooling with an eerie white light. It wasn't a hallucination, it was an interface, one that felt intimately connected to his very soul. It crackled with energy, signaling the awakening of something dormant. A system window materialized in the air, its text crisp and clear. A holographic screen flashed, power of gluttony, integration complete finished. Sichin watched the message linger, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. He thought, I've returned to before it all began. This time he wasn't alone, he had brought a piece of the future back with him. He pulled out a nearby smartphone and checked the display. The screen confirmed his suspicions, May 16, 2157. The time was 1615, it was the exact day and month he had died in his previous life, but 10 years earlier. The cycle had broken and a new timeline had begun. Sichin stood before the mirror, the glowing system interface reflected in the glass alongside his youthful face. He reaffirmed the impossible truth to himself. Came back 10 years in the past, May 16, 2157. The sunlight through the window felt like a blessing he didn't deserve, but one he would use to his advantage. His golden eyes narrowed, flickering with a faint, dangerous red light as his killer instincts resurfaced. He realized the strategic importance of this date. This is 3 years before the descent of Demon Kings. He had 3 years to prepare, 3 years to gather strength, and 3 years to ensure that history did not repeat itself. A dark vision of the future flashed through his mind, massive purple tentacles and demonic eyes looming over a helpless city. 3 years from now in 2160, the first Demon King, Wrath, will descend. He remembered the screams and the smell of burning rubber as the world began its slow descent into hell. The vision shifted to the shadows of monstrous beings emerging from a red void. It was Wrath who opened the gates of hell. And because of him, the other demon kings followed into the human world one by one. That was the starting point. Sichin's fists clenched at his sides as the memories of the invasion flooded back. He saw the burning ruins and the silhouettes of demons standing over the corpses of humanity, of total destruction. And the reason, I lost everything. The loss of his sister, his master, and his comrades burned in his chest like an unquenchable flame. This time he wouldn't just be a survivor, he would be the executioner. He looked down at his palms, feeling the youthful blood coursing through them. A fierce predatory grin touched his lips. But now, I am back. The despair of the previous life was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating resolve. He had been given a second chance and he wouldn't waste a single second. His eyes blazed with a crimson intensity as he formulated his plan. As long as I defeat the first one to appear, Wrath, I can prevent the gates of hell from ever opening. I have a chance to change everything. The mission was clear. Kill the first Demon King and save the world before the war even starts. The system message remained floating in his vision, a constant reminder of the gift he had received. Power of gluttony, integration complete, finished. As the initial shock began to fade, a new curiosity took hold. Inside his mind, he thought, come to think of it. Standing in the silence of the infirmary, Sichin found himself unable to pull his eyes away from the shimmering text. This power of gluttony, it was a name he had never encountered in his previous life, yet the interface had been tethered to his vision since the moment he woke. Inside his mind, he questioned, what is this power of gluttony interface? It's been floating in front of me ever since I opened my eyes. It was an unknown variable, a mysterious force that defied his memories of the future. Curiosity outweighed caution as he reached out, his fingers brushing against the flickering waves of light. The digital strings vibrated at his touch, humming with a raw predatory energy that felt both alien and exhilarating. It was as if the system was waiting for his command to reveal its secrets. As he focused his intent, the screen flickered, preparing to display the impossible truth of his new existence. Sikhen stared at the holographic screen floating in the air, his eyes wide with disbelief. A translucent window displayed a set of numbers that defied logic. He gasped as he realized what he was looking at, a status bar from his own past, yet fundamentally changed. Inside his mind, he thought, as the weight of the discovery began to sink in. He leaned in closer to examine the flickering data. The name on the screen was Xiaozhou, his identity within this mysterious system. But it was the attributes that were truly terrifying. Strength, stamina, elemental power, speed, luck, and spirit were all set to a perfect 100. He questioned his reality, thinking, what is all this game-like data? Are these my current attributes? For a level 1, these stats were nothing short of godlike. He looked down at his youthful hands, then back to the mirror, his red eyes reflecting a cold, sharp intelligence that didn't belong to a university student. He calculated his situation, thinking, I've never seen anything like this before. In the past, I always fought using my awakened power. This was something entirely different, a variable that could flip the world on its head. Memories of the old world's hierarchy flashed through his mind, represented by the glowing icons of different classes. The Star Mage, the Nucleus Warrior, and the Lightning Assassin. He recalled the harsh reality of their society. A thought echoed in his head, only 1 in 10,000 people in this world can become an awakener. In a world of billions, they were the elite, the gods among men. He peered through the window at the sprawling campus, the sun setting behind the modern architecture of his youth. This was the National Awakener University, a place where the future was decided. He mused, and the school I'm currently attending is one that only recruits potential awakeners. It was a breeding ground for the powerful and a slaughterhouse for the weak. A dark memory of his previous life surfaced, a vision of himself on his knees, surrounded by the shadows of those who once looked down on him. He felt the phantom pain of every kick and insult. He lamented, but unfortunately in my previous life, I failed to awaken during my university years. For 4 whole years, I stayed at the very bottom of the food chain. Anyone could just walk up and give me a kick. The bitterness of his past failure burned in his throat. He rubbed his chin, his expression shifting into a weary, cynical scowl. The irony of his situation wasn't lost on him. He muttered to himself, is this why I woke up in the infirmary? It seemed that even regressing 10 years hadn't saved him from the humiliation he had endured as a failed student. But then the system glitched and a new interface appeared, a card shimmering with static. Si Chen's eyes narrowed as he focused on the image of a shadowed figure wreathed in electricity. He whispered, HM, as he recognized the silhouette. It was a fragment of the power he had spent a lifetime perfecting. The details of the card crystallized into an archive file. It was the Lightning Assassin, a class of pure lethality. The screen detailed his old skills, Lightning God which could boost movement speed tenfold and Lightning Blade, a condensed arc of paralyzing power. He stared at the text, his heart thumping thinking a lightning-type assassin. It was exactly what he had been before his death. A mental image of his true self flashed before him. A master of storms standing amidst the lightning. He could feel the phantom sensation of electricity dancing across his skin once more. He wondered, isn't this my class from my previous life? I can vaguely feel a surge of power flowing through my body. Could it be that the strength from my past life was inherited along with me? It was the only logical explanation for his impossible stats. The realization made his blood boil with a mixture of excitement and cold fury. If he already possessed the power of an SSS rank hunter, then the 3 years before the invasion would no longer be about survival. They would be about absolute dominance. He asked himself, did I awaken early? The light of the interface bathed his face in an eerie golden glow. He didn't hesitate. He willed the system to act, watching as a loading bar filled with a sharp white light. A notification flashed, switching class. Inside his head, he decided, let's test this power. He could feel the latent energy in his veins beginning to churn, waiting for the command to erupt. A sharp snap echoed in the room, the sound of the world's laws bending to his will. Si Chen's gaze shifted toward the door. His senses suddenly heightened to a degree that was almost overwhelming. He could hear footsteps in the hallway, the heartbeat of a person approaching, and the faint hum of power from nearby electronics. The door creaked open and a young man with brown hair and large round glasses stepped inside, his face pale with concern. A status bar appeared above his head, Ma Long, E-rank flower chanter. The sight of him made Si Chen's heart tighten. Ma Long stared at his roommate, his voice cracking as he cried out, in pure surprise. Ma Long rushed to Si Chen's side, his hands fluttering nervously as he checked for injuries. "Hey buddy, you're awake, is your body okay now?" he asked, his voice full of genuine frantic worry. Si Chen stood there frozen as the system window remained hovering between them. He thought, "Is your body okay now?" while carefully observing his friend. Si Chen looked at the holographic card of the Devourer and then back at Ma Long, who seemed completely unaware of the digital waves around them. He confirmed his theory, thinking, "As I thought. No one else can see this interface." Forced his expression into a calm mask and replied simply, "I'm fine now." But Ma Long wasn't easily convinced. He poked and prodded at Si Chen, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Hey, all your injuries are gone," he shouted, his voice echoing in the small room. "You took such a heavy beating just yesterday. Are you recovering even faster than an awakener like me?" The sheer impossibility of Si Chen's recovery was enough to leave the young chanter reeling. Si Chen looked at his friend, a wave of bittersweet nostalgia washing over him. "This is my university roommate, Ma Long." To anyone else, he was just a low-ranked student. But to Si Chen, he was a ghost from a world that had been erased. The bandage on Ma Long's cheek was a stark reminder of the harsh world they inhabited. He watched Ma Long adjust his glasses, a flurry of thoughts crossing his mind. Although he awakened during college, he was a total bottom tier. In my past life, he was tragically killed on the third day of the Demon King's descent. The memory of his friend's death was a cold, sharp blade in his soul. But now he is truly standing right in front of my eyes. Ma Long tilted his head, wondering, "Why do I feel like you've actually gotten stronger? Is it just my imagination?" The setting sun cast long shadows across Si Chen's face as he looked at his friend. A small, genuine smile almost touched his lips. "Only at this moment do I truly feel it. I have really come back." The reality of his regression was no longer a theoretical concept. It was a physical weight, a second chance to save the only person who had stayed by his side. Ma Long suddenly grabbed Si Chen by the shoulders, his panic returning. "That's right. Tomorrow is the rank test," he blurted out, shaking his friend with frantic energy. "Since you're okay now, let's get back and prepare." The urgency in his voice reminded Si Chen that life at the university was moving forward, whether he was ready or not. Ma Long continued to drag him toward the door, his voice echoing down the hallway. "Even if you haven't awakened yet, it's still crucial for your graduation evaluation," he yelled, his legs moving in a blur as he urged Si Chen to hurry. For Ma Long, the test was the most important thing in the world. For Si Chen, it was merely the first step in a much larger war. They stepped out onto the balcony, overlooking the vast campus under the golden glow of twilight. The National Awakina University was a sprawling complex of glass and steel, a monument to human potential. Below them, the sports fields were alive with the sounds of training and competition, a scene of peaceful preparation before the coming storm. The campus teemed with a vibrant energy of youth and untapped potential. Everywhere Si Chen looked, students were manifesting their powers in small, mundane ways. A girl conjured a swirling ball of purple energy in her palm, while others laughed and talked as if they had all the time in the world. The sounds of laughter echoed across the plaza, a carefree melody that Si Chen knew would eventually be drowned out by the screams of the dying. On the soccer field, a student sprinted with bursts of fire erupting from his shoes, while another launched a ball with superhuman force. They were merely playing with the very powers that would later be used in a desperate struggle for survival. Si Chen watched them, a cold, predatory light in his eyes, as he followed Ma Long into the heart of the crowd. He was the only one who knew that this peace was a fragile lie, and he was the only one with the power to keep it from being shattered. Si Chen walked with Ma Long through the crowded campus, the setting sun casting long, golden shadows across the pavement. He looked at the groups of students, their faces bright with life and petty concerns, and felt a strange, hollow sensation in his chest. He whispered to himself, "It's been a long time since I've seen so many living people." Beside him, Ma Long shivered, his round glasses reflecting the sunset as he asked in a shaky voice, "You, what kind of scary things are you saying?" Ma Long adjusted the bandage on his cheek, his expression filled with a mix of exhaustion and genuine concern. He looked up at Si Chen, his eyes pleading for a return to normalcy. "Buddy, let's just walk around the playground," he suggested, hoping a bit of fresh air would clear whatever dark thoughts were clouding his friend's mind. The fallen leaves swirled around Si Chen's feet as he continued to walk, his gaze distant. The peaceful university campus was a stark contrast to the graveyard he had just escaped. A grim thought settled in his mind: I once lost everything completely. The memory of the blood-soaked horizon felt more real than the stone buildings surrounding him. A dark vision of the apocalypse flickered in his mind, showing his past self standing amidst the ash and crumbling skyscrapers of a dead world. He knew the timeline of the coming disaster better than anyone. He realized, if I do nothing, that desperate future will soon arrive again. The weight of his knowledge was a heavy chain around his soul. He stopped walking, his red eyes blazing with a cold, predatory intensity that made the air around him feel heavy. He made a silent vow to himself. I must take action immediately. I have to increase my level as fast as possible. Survival was no longer an option. He needed to become the apex predator before the true monsters arrived. He recalled the basic laws of this era, visions of armored warriors standing over the corpses of massive beasts. In this era, there is only one way for an Awakina to level up: by killing monsters in the demon lairs. The raw primal nature of power in this world meant that blood was the only currency that mattered. His thoughts turned to the political landscape, a vision of do not cross tape sealing off a glowing purple rift. But almost all demon lairs are monopolized by the great guilds. Outsiders have zero chance to level up. He looked back at his own flickering status window and wondered if these are my current stats. Then how strong am I compared to other Awakinas and monsters? The system window displayed his name, Si Chen, and his perfect level 1 stats. He mentally reviewed the world's hierarchy. To distinguish power levels, the government has classified Awakinas and monsters into ranks. From highest to lowest, they are S, A, B, C, D, and E. He knew where he once stood, and he knew where he was now. He watched the other students passing by, seeing their low-ranked energy signatures through his hunter's eyes. Most students at the university are stuck at E rank. Only a few geniuses or those with guild backing can reach D rank. They were all small fish in a very dangerous pond, completely unaware of the sharks already swimming among them. The level 1 indicator on his status screen glowed with an eerie, steady light. He looked at the athletic track stretching out before them, although I can estimate based on experience. I wonder what rank I get if I took the test. The upcoming graduation evaluation was the perfect opportunity to test his newfound potential. Si Chen glanced sideways at Ma Long, who was still looking around with a nervous, confused expression. Indefinitely stronger than him, he thought, a cold calculation running through his mind. Ma Long noticed the stare and tilted his head, a literal question mark appearing over his head in his confusion. The peace was shattered in an instant. A basketball thrown with malicious force tore through the air and struck Ma Long directly in the face. The impact was sickening, the ball bouncing away as Ma Long's head snapped back. Si Chen watched with a sudden icy focus, the world slowing down to a crawl as his killer instincts flared. Ma Long collapsed onto the hard pavement, clutching his face as blood began to trickle from his nose. His glasses were knocked askew and a pained "ugh" escaped his lips. He curled into a ball, the sudden violence leaving him reeling in the dirt. Si Chen's gaze drifted toward the source of the attack. A group of 4 students sat on the nearby stairs, their postures arrogant and relaxed. They were the apex predators of the campus hierarchy. The lead bully, a muscular man in a dark tank top, leaned forward with a cruel smirk. "Isn't that Si Chen and Ma Long?" he called out, his voice full of mock friendliness. K letter 1 EBB, B letter 1 EFT, and letter 1 EA1T, Kong Turn, unnamed bully, looked down at them with eyes full of disdain, a dog tag dangling from his neck. He adjusted his position, his massive shoulders blocking the light. "You guys recovered pretty fast," he commented, his voice a low, threatening rumble that carried across the court. To him, they were just playthings. Ma Long looked up, his face pale and his eyes wide with terror as he recognized their attackers. He whispered frantically to Si Chen, his voice trembling. "Real bad luck, we actually ran into him." The fear radiating from him was palpable, the memory of previous beatings fresh in his mind. Si Chen stood his ground, his back to the camera as he looked up at the bullies. He didn't move to help Ma Long up, nor did he flinch. He simply observed them, his red eyes analyzing their stats and their weak points with a cold military precision. The sun set behind the buildings, casting the campus into deep orange shadows. The lead bully chuckled, glancing back at his cohorts as if sharing a private joke. "I told you these 2 kids were tough," he boasted, his smirk widening. He was enjoying the spectacle, the feeling of absolute power he held over the trash of the university. Behind him, another student with white hair stood with arms crossed, watching silently. The lead bully leaned forward, his expression turning cold and demanding. You clearly knew I was playing ball here. Why didn't you think to bring 2 crates of drinks? He expected immediate submission, the same way he always had. To him, the world was a simple place where the strong took whatever they wanted.